Hi, I'm Captain Grant Coppin with Texas Fishing Tips, and this is your weekly fishing report.
This week we've been getting quite a bit of rain, so the tide's been coming up a little. I've been fishing these potholes right in this area, close to PETA, throwing the cut bait, catching some good reds. Pretty much, if you just kind of run around up here and find these sand pockets, you see on the screen, here's some right here. As you get closer to pure oil, there's more and more up here in the flat. Well, that's where the reds are holding in this flat with the tide coming up. They're going to come up off that drop off. Like I said last week, the tide was a little lower. Now the tide's coming up. So fish these potholes in the flat, throw cut bait in them. If you can get a hold of some fresh skipjack, fresh menhaden, fresh mullet, that's really the way to go. Those sardines, man, they work, but I'm telling you, you're going to be throwing a sardine every 2 minutes and reel back a skeleton because those pinfish are bad up in there. There's also some black drum in here, so if you don't mind the perch, throw those live shrimp, catch a few black drum mixed in with your reds. Over here on the back side of the spoils in Nighthawk Bay, we've been catching some good reds in that dirty water. Good thing about the storms is they kind of kick up that dirty water, and you can fish in here. The water coming up, it brings those fish up into the drain, so fish as tight as you can to the shore. Those fish will be right up on the shoreline, right up in the drain. And if you can get your baits in the sand, that works too, right along the grass edge, and you'll catch some good fish on those cut bait. Over here on the inside of the spoils and deadmans, with the tide coming up, I can actually get my boat up into here. Again, those fish are going to move up into the drains just like they are in Nighthawk. These spoils have redfish on them too, so if they're kind of crowded in Nighthawk or crowded over here, vice versa, come up in here, throw some cut bait on the back side of these spoils, catch some good reds, an occasional drum or an occasional trout, hitting a live shrimp. But really the skipjacks and the mullets the way to go, and just fish these tight to the shore. Those reds are going to be right along the sand. Alright, over here at East Clayburg Point, we've been catching just a mixed bag of puppy drum and some trout mixed in, lots of little trout. They were keepers back in 2020, but right now there's a lot of 15 and 16 and a half inch trout over here that we can't keep. With the tide coming up, I know what's going to happen to these puppy drum. They're going to come off of East Clayburg, and they're going to come and run right down the tide gauge. With the tide coming up, I not always do this every time we got a high tide and that water's coming over the top of the bar. This bar is going to load up with drum, and they're going to be those puppy drum. And those puppy drum move up and down the tide gauge from Point of Rocks to East Clayburg. And when I say puppy drum, I'm talking about the good eaters, the 14 to 16, maybe even 17, but nothing really over 17 inches. And there's a million of them. That tide comes up, they get on the tide gauge, the tide comes down. Depending on the wind, they either end up at Point of Rocks or they come down here and they end up at East Clayburg. Not necessarily, one or the other is better, but right now they're at East Clayburg. They may end up at Point of Rocks a little bit later, but with the tide coming up, they're going to start running down this sandbar, and live shrimp's the way to go. Over here around the center reef, been catching some good fish out here, drum and actually some nice trout on croaker. And that's kind of what I was doing this whole last week. Of course, this week is going to be a little bit different. In between storms and while the wind's light, this is good. When the wind's strong, don't come fish this because it's a washing machine. You can come over here on those calmer days. We're going to have some of those, and coming up here in the next few days, once this tropical rain coming up out of Mexico kind of diminishes, and we'll have those calm dog days of summer again where you can get back on center reef and catch those fish. Live shrimp under popping corks, what I've been using, and some live croaker for the trout.
I'm Captain Grant Coppin. Thanks for watching.